The political drama that has gripped Canada has finally reached its dramatic crescendo. The curtain has fallen on what many are calling one of the most contentious and perplexing federal elections in recent memory. The once bright spotlight that illuminated Mark Carney's perceived victory has dimmed, giving way to the stark reality of a judicial earthquake that has fundamentally reshaped the Canadian political landscape. Imposing stack of World Economic Forum literature, Mark Carney is undoubtedly experiencing his own personal Greek tragedy. His carbon-neutral handkerchief, no doubt embroidered with slogans of climate justice, is surely saturated with the tears of a man whose ambitions of building a democratic castle on shifting sands, tide of truth, and a judicial tsunami of unprecedented force. This is not a mere political inconvenience or a minor bureaucratic misstep. A federal judge in Canada, a figure embodying the solemnity and authority of justice, has courageously pried open the Pandora's box of the 2025 federal election ballots. What has emerged is far more than a few misplaced votes or inconsequential clerical errors. This is the political equivalent of discovering that the judges at the Olympic figure skating finals were covertly sporting. Liberal Party lapel pins beneath their formal attire. The unfolding scandal transcends a simple news story. It is a chaotic symphony of disarray, alleged betrayal, and undeniable incompetence, all performed on the grand scrutinizing stage of Canadian democracy. Let us transport ourselves back to the pivotal year of 2025. The federal election campaign was in full swing, and Pierre Poilievre, then the leader of the Conservative Party, was demonstrating an almost unstoppable political momentum. He surged through the polls with the force and inevitability of a freight train thundering across the Canadian countryside. His rallies were not merely attended, they were so overwhelmingly packed that local authorities were compelled to deploy specialized traffic control teams to manage the throngs of supporters. Political pollsters, accustomed to the predictable rhythms of Canadian elections, found themselves scratching their heads in bewildered attempts to comprehend the unprecedented groundswell of support for Poilievre and his party. Incumbent Liberal Party, seemingly adrift and clutching desperately to the lingering specter of Justin Trudeau's past popularity, resembled passengers clinging to the last life raft on a rapidly sinking Titanic. The writing was too many observers. Unequivocally, on the wall, the Liberals appeared to be sinking, while Pierre Poilievre, like an intrepid surfer, a gripping political thriller, an unexpected declaration shattered the conventional narrative. Mark Carney, yes, that Mark Carney, the distinguished economist, former governor of the Bank of Canada, and former governor of the Bank of England, a man whose public persona often exuded the charisma of a meticulously crafted spreadsheet and the leadership instincts of a perfectly calibrated thermostat, was suddenly declared the victor. It was an outcome that struck many Canadians as utterly inexplicable, as if the seasoned banker-turned politician had managed to pull off the electoral equivalent of Houdini's most audacious escape act. Canadians collectively blinked in disbelief. Wait, him? Was the widespread sentiment. The man who seemed barely capable of inspiring a collective yawn, let alone sparking a political movement, had somehow triumphed. A palpable sense of unease settled over the nation, something many felt simply did not add up. It wasn't the pleasant aroma of fresh Atlantic cod. Rather, it was something far more unsettling, akin to the pungent stench of something left to decay on the sidewalks of Ottawa for days on end. Now, the stark, unvarnished truth has begun to emerge, and it is proving to be even more disquieting than the initial suspicions had suggested. A Superior Court ruling, delivered with the full weight of judicial authority, has detonated the carefully constructed illusion of electoral integrity. Judicial recounts have been formally triggered across the nation, encompassing at least 11 ridings with the potential for more to follow. But let it be unequivocally clear, this is no polite, typically Canadian audit of electoral results. This is a full-fledged, scorched earth investigation into a democratic process that, according to the emerging evidence, appears to have buckled and, in some instances, seemingly collapsed under the combined weight of Liberal Party arrogance and what is being widely described as the demonstrable incompetence of Elections Canada. The ballots themselves, when meticulously examined, reveal a narrative of dysfunction that borders on the absurd, a story that veers dangerously close to political parody. In some instances, legitimate ballots were reportedly rejected due to seemingly trivial errors, such as incorrect postal codes. In other, more baffling cases, ballots simply vanished, as if they had been inexplicably sucked into a bureaucratic Bermuda Triangle. In certain ridings, the initial reported difference between the winning and losing candidates was so incredibly slim that it made the balance on a highly itemized credit card statement appear substantial by comparison. Consider, for example, the riding of Terra Nova in Newfoundland, where the margin of victory was a solitary vote. Yes, one single solitary vote separated the candidates, have altered the entire outcome. Meanwhile, Mark Carney, the individual who had positioned himself as the self-proclaimed savior of the Liberal Party, has, in the harsh light of these revelations, proven to be far less a transformative leader, and far more of a profound political liability. His campaign pledges of integrity, order, and competent governance now resonate with a cruel irony, as he finds himself presiding over an election that increasingly feels like a surreal and deeply troubling episode of The Twilight Zone. Take, for instance, the riding of Windsor-Thampsa, where the Liberals initially celebrated a supposed victory with a seemingly comfortable 77-vote lead. Yet, upon judicial recount, the seat inexplicably flipped, granting victory to the Conservatives. By a margin of 4 votes, this is not merely a correction in the traditional sense. It is an electoral backflip executed from a high-diving board, leaving observers stunned and questioning the initial count's accuracy. And then there is the perplexing case of Vancouver South, where the Liberals had initially claimed victory by a margin of 56 votes. However, upon further examination, it was discovered that the number of ballots cast simply did not reconcile with the recorded number of individuals who had voted. The unsettling implications of ghost voters or zombie ballots are the kind of electoral mess that would drive even the most seasoned mystery solver like Scooby-Doo to throw up his paws in exasperation. In Halifax, a bizarre administrative blunder saw ballots from one distinct polling district inexplicably filed within another. Frankly, such a scenario might actually possess a greater degree of organizational coherence than the chaotic state of this election. Quebec, never one to be outdone in matters of political absurdity, contributed its own unique flavor to the unfolding drama. A critical seat was flipped during a recount due to, of all things, a postal code error. Not a disagreement over policy, not an overwhelming surge in voter enthusiasm, but a mere postal code. This is the disconcerting reality of Canadian democracy in 2025. A fragile, glitch-prone system seemingly managed by an army of bureaucrats armed with clipboards and a cohort of Silicon Valley interns on entirely unpaid sabbaticals. At the very epicenter of this hurricane of incompetence and electoral disarray stands Mark Carney, the man who is touted as the Liberal Party's proverbial white knight, their much-needed savior after years of the Trudeau-era's scandals and political fatigue. Instead, he has, in this crucible of scrutiny, morphed into the political equivalent of a self-destruct button for his party. This is the same individual who meticulously campaigned on a platform of economic wizardry and unparalleled managerial brilliance, yet who now appears utterly incapable of competently overseeing a simple ballot count, even within his own riding, without plunging the entire nation into an unprecedented state of electoral chaos. His Montreal riding, in particular, has emerged as a veritable disaster zone, riddled with a bewildering array of inconsistencies ranging from ballots reportedly counted well after legal deadlines to serious irregularities identified in advanced polling procedures. The lack of proper seals on ballot boxes and questionable voter identification protocols have led many to cynically suggest that Elections Canada might as well have utilized Tupperware containers from Canadian Tire to store these critical democratic instruments, given the apparent lack of rigorous security and chain of custody. In stark contrast to Carney's floundering and the Liberal Party's growing crisis, Pierre Poilievre has presented himself as a beacon of stability and directness, while Carney has conspicuously ducked press conferences, issuing sterile press releases that read as though they were generated by a malfunctioning AR.